From the United States, we have Dr. Mark Tomass, instructor at Harvard University Extension School. Professor Mark Tomass, thank you very much for joining us. Let me start by asking you. You have seen the recent incident which took place in Saudi Arabia at an oil facility. And today, in an interview to CNN International, the foreign minister of Iran, Mohammad Javad Zarif, threatened an all-out war in case Iran is hit by a military strike. Please tell me, do you think Iran is exhibiting unwarranted aggression?
Hello, Jafar. Thank you for inviting me. We have to think about the Iranian situation from Iran's point of view. From Iran's point of view, Iran has been under siege for a very long time, and sanctions on it have been escalating because the President of the United States withdrew from the nuclear deal. So Iran feels that it has no other option but to move to a different stage. So I don't know who has committed this attack, but I can say that Iran has the motivation, right? Has the motive to conduct such attack because it is being pushed in a corner. It has very few options. It depends on oil significantly in terms of getting hard currency. In terms of satisfying its imports. So it feels that if this plan is going to continue, the plan of putting Iran under siege, it has to do something. So it is possible, in principle, it is possible, although we have no evidence, because I don't believe anything what the Saudis said about it. It is possible that Iran had conducted. So it is one of the possibilities, because it has the motive. The question of going all-out war, if it were to an all-out war, if it were attacked, I think that is a possibility because, again, it has no other option. If it is militarily attacked, it will show that it is not going to be on the receiving side of the missiles coming from U.S. airplanes, that it is going to attack all of what it can in the Middle East. And that would probably involve also its proxy forces such as Hezbollah, who actually announced that it will attack Israel if Iran was attacked. And
okay, Professor, if I may ask here, I want to go back to one of the points you made. It is clear that Iran has the motive, but does Iran have the technology? Saudi Arabia has Patriot missiles provided by the United States. I mean, it is not the first time Saudi Arabian territory was attacked. We have seen just a few months ago an attack in Riyadh. So how hard is it to intercept these missiles when you have the Patriot missile defense system?
Well, that's a very good question. I think this is the million-dollar question or billion-dollar question. You know, the Saudi Arabia has been buying so much weapons, spent many, many billions of dollars for buying weapons, and it looks like these weapons are either ineffective or that they don't know how to use it. So I don't know why they didn't deploy these Patriot missiles. Maybe they did deploy and they didn't work, or maybe they just the technology is not good enough in terms of surveying the entire region or their most important facilities. So this is a big blow to the U.S. military industry. I mean, that's what President Putin referred to this incident, and he said maybe Saudi Arabia should buy S-400 missiles, the anti-missile defense system. So I don't know why they didn't deploy them. I don't know why they didn't work. Most likely they don't know how to use them. It is possible that they are ineffective because in Israel also was not able to defend itself against the retaliation by Hezbollah that was conducted 2 weeks ago. So it looks like the idea of having an anti-missile defense system is a hoax. There is no such thing. But to your first question, whether Iran has such technology, I think, of course, it does. Iran has been developing its missile system for a very long time, and now they have a drone system. I mean, even Yemen is producing these drones, and they had an exhibition about last month showing all of the drones that they have. So, yeah, I think Iran is capable of that. However, I think I think the most important thing is to go to the root of these problems. The root of the problems between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and the root of the problem between the United States and Iran. And if you can let me, I mean, I can go into it.
Definitely, Professor. Please go ahead.
Well, I mean, since the Iranian Revolution seized power, the Iranian Revolution succeeded in seizing power. The Shah was deposed. The Shah was a main Western ally, not only to the United States, but also a Western ally, an ally to Israel. So the removal of the Shah and having a new revolution that declared didn't recognize Israel. It had its own ideas about how the Muslim world should look like. All of that was very threatening to all of the powers in the region. So you have Saudi Arabia was threatened because Iran now is ruled by a theocracy that believes that it should be running the Mecca and Medina because the Saudis are not good managers of these two holy sites. So Saudi Arabia feels threatened by that because there were actually Iranian pilgrims who would demonstrate every time they go to Mecca and Medina. So the Saudi royal family is threatened by that. So that's why, for example, right after the Iranian Revolution succeeded, they supported without limit Saddam Hussein's war against Iran. And as it is very clear from history that the United States, Europe, Jordan, everybody was behind Iraq in its war on Iran. Now that failed. The Iran-Iraq war didn't produce the desirable outcome. The theocracy is still there. Iraq wasn't able to accomplish anything. Iran got everything out of the negotiation, everything except the deposition of, except for the resignation of Saddam Hussein. So you see that you had a long war taking place there, and Iran nevertheless prevailed. And we have to give credit to the ideology that they have, the ideology of martyrdom, the ideology of resistance, the ideology that they have been pursuing since they took power. So from that perspective, I really don't see military action which Saudi Arabia wants to bring in and wants to bring the United States to fight a war against Iran. I think that is going to be totally ineffective, and it's going to be counterproductive. And I think the result will be destruction on unprecedented scale, both in Saudi Arabia and in other parts of the Middle East. On the other hand, if you want to talk about the other part of the problem, what is the root of the problem between Saudi Arabia and the United States? So you had the Obama administration was willing to sign the agreement. They signed the agreement. They put limits on the nuclear program, but then President Trump came and he said that he didn't like it, and he didn't like it because primarily Israel didn't like it. So he wanted to advance the Israeli opinion about this agreement, and he wanted to implement what is the Israelis thought should be the solution to this problem, and that was to have the United States withdraw from the agreement and start by imposing sanctions and escalating step by step. Hopefully, maybe even bring it to the brink of war. Hopefully, at the end, to actually depose the theocracy in Iran, which is a very difficult task to accomplish because again, you are facing a government, you are facing a system that has an ideology of resistance, the ideology of martyrdom, that they would not be willing to give up that easily. So what's going to be the options in the U.S. options? The U.S. options, as it is very clear now, almost everybody, including the hawks, are not saying anything about carrying out a war against Iran.
Professor, let me ask you one question here. And I think, let me tell my audience as well that the background which you just gave is very important in order to understand what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. So let me ask you, a lot of people in the United States have been questioning President Donald Trump's tweet of willing to engage the U.S. military in a conflict for Saudi Arabia. In other words, implying that the U.S. military is for rent. So, is the U.S. military there to protect its own citizens, or are they mercenaries for others?
Unfortunately, President Trump, the way he has framed the relationship between the Arab Gulf states and the United States, it was framed in that way, that we are there to protect you, that without us you cannot last a couple of weeks. He said that publicly, right? And he presented the U.S. as a power that is going to be paid in order to protect, which, if you translate it, it becomes a mercenary force. It's a shameless position to take, especially for a great country like the United States, to act in a way as if it is a mercenary force. That is, that's unfortunate. And this is a very embarrassing situation for the United States and for Donald Trump in particular, because he wants to present himself as a protector of the Gulf in order to get paid. On the other hand, he wasn't able to. So how did everybody's asking, what about these missiles? What about the Patriot missiles? How come that you were not able to defend the most important oil refineries in Saudi Arabia? So here's a big question, and I think this is what politicians should think about, those who are running for election. To bring some pride to the U.S. military, and not to frame the U.S. and its force and its military as a mercenary force, as somebody who wants to go and save people who pay. What can I say more? It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me to feel that my country is acting in this way.
All right, so let's move on from this point. And Professor, during the introduction of this program, when we started talking, you already mentioned that you do not believe what the Saudis say. So how do you feel about the evidences presented by Saudi Arabia in yesterday's press conference? I mean, it seemed pretty much similar to what Prime Minister Netanyahu does with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because we are not in a position to evaluate the evidence, we cannot really conclude from that kind of press conference that this was an Iranian attack beyond a reasonable doubt. Given the fact that we cannot make that conclusion, we can only say that, well, Saudi Arabia has the motivation to present this attack as an Iranian attack, to embarrass the United States in order to drag the United States into a war with Iran. For some reason, Saudi Arabia feels that Iran could be totally destroyed and that they could take out their entire missile system with the U.S. help. I don't really see that is happening. So it is another unreasonable expectation. I think the best thing that could happen here is for the United States to reduce its ceiling of demands against vis-a-vis Iran. I think it should revise its objection to the nuclear agreement. It should abandon the idea that Iran should dismantle its missile system, because it will never do that. So, and pursuing the policy of maintaining that strangulation of this country is not going to work. It's going to make Iran more bellicose, more aggressive, and you may end up having these sort of incidents in the future, because because the motivation is there. So again, it may happen. The Houthis may do it. Somebody else may do it. We don't know. But Iran is the option that Iran will sit and wait until the sanctions impoverish its people, and then the people would revolt and depose the theocracy. I think their option is, no, we don't want to wait. We want out of this. So if you are not going to let us export our oil, nobody's going to let us. No, I will not let anybody I will not let anybody export the oil. And I think that's what they would want to say. Whether they deny or admit that they fired these missiles, it's really irrelevant. The consequence on the oil supply is this. The message is clear. Whether we can prove it or not, that's a different story.
Okay. Now, Professor, whenever the United States exhibits an interest in getting involved in a conflict, especially in the Middle East, we immediately see Russia is stepping in. And with regards to the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia, how would you evaluate Russia's role? What is Russia trying to do here?
Russia wants to replace the United States simply in the Middle East. That was the initial motive of Russia of entering into the Syrian conflict directly. Was that it wants to come back to the Middle East. It wants to strengthen its relationship with Syria that it used to have before the Soviet Union collapsed, and then be the alternative to the United States, because the United States had made it clear, not only now but even before with the Obama administration, that the United States wants to get out of the Middle East and it wants to turn to Asia. So who is going to fill the vacuum, right? So Russia realized that, and it is trying to fill the vacuum. So Russia now is not only presenting itself in Syria, but obviously you know that it has very good relationship with Turkey. It wants to establish the same relationship. It has good relationship with Iran. It wants to establish similar relationship with Saudi Arabia. We can be, we can protect the security of the region because we are more reasonable. We are not warmongers. We can encourage people to conduct, to solve their problems through dialogue, as they are saying right now. They are presenting themselves as a more reasonable power to fill in the vacuum after the U.S. gets out. And I also think that instead of dragging Russia in all the way into the Middle East beyond Syria, I think the Saudis should realize that they should have some sort of non-aggression agreement with Iran. Not only Saudi Arabia, but all of the Gulf countries. They should have non-aggression agreement. That is, because they feel that they are threatened, to take up Iran on its offer to have some sort of non-aggression agreement where all of them guarantee each other's security, where they say that we are not going to intervene in your internal affairs. We want to respect your territories and so on and so forth, and let the ideological religious conflict solve itself through dialogue, through talking, through discussion. You see, this intra-Muslim conflict should not be pushed into a military war, into military confrontation. It is clear that there are religious roots to these conflicts. They should be settled through dialogue, and I don't know why not. I mean, you have the majority of the Muslim world is Sunni. The minority is Shia. I don't see why the Sunnis would not, especially Sunnis of Saudi Arabia, would not be willing to talk.
Rightly said, Professor. Now, as I understand, the United States withdrawal from the JCPOA was unwarranted. And I also believe that Iran's aggression at this point is also unwarranted. Would you agree?
Well, again, it would be useless for me to evaluate the situation. You have to think about what they are thinking. You have to put yourself in the Iranian position. Their alternative is just to sit and wait as the sanctions escalate. And the sanctions, I don't know what more the United States can do. The United States now wants to, at least in Congress, there are voices, for example, such as Senator Rubio today was saying that we should go to Europe and ask them to get out of the nuclear agreement. We should go to everybody who is involved in a nuclear agreement to ask them to get out so that we could keep on strangulating Iran. And then the question is, what about Russia and China, whether Russia and China would be willing to do that? And China is the most important player here because China is importing Iranian oil. Reasonable, not reasonable, it's hard for me to say. They feel that they are under threat. They feel if they keep the same course, they would be losing. So they want to act before it's too late. I think that is what is in their mind.
But Professor, the U.S. President and high officials from the United States, especially recently, have expressed their will to sit down with Iran without any preconditions. But Again and again, Iran has refused to sit down with the United States. So how does Iran expect to solve this when they're not even willing to sit down on a negotiating table?
You are absolutely right on that. And again, I think my interpretation is that because of the way Iran has been portrayed in the U.S. media, the way the U.S. officials have been portraying Iran is so aggressive, and they feel that they are being insulted. And again, this has to do with this Middle Eastern pride that they don't want to talk to the United States, and it is the Satan of the world, and so on. You know, they react using similar language. So I think what Iran should do is should start dialogue with the low-level. If they don't feel comfortable with high-level meetings, they should start direct talks with the United States with low-level meetings, and they can still put their position on the table, saying that we are not going to give up our missile building capabilities. We are willing to. We are not interested in building a nuclear bomb, and you could have all of the checks and balances that you want to impose on us in order to make sure that we are not going to build a nuclear bomb. I don't know why not. I mean, they should do that. I think they should not stick to their guns and say we don't want to talk to the United States. You know, that would be like you know, it's not smart to do it. It's not mature to do it. So I think they should be talking to the United States.
Okay, Professor, now my last question to you. You are an expert on Middle East conflicts, and you have followed the recent developments that have taken place between Iran and Saudi Arabia. How likely is a military confrontation at this point?
It is very unlikely, I think, because everybody knows, well, everybody except for Saudi Arabia, everybody else knows that it is going to be very disruptive to the oil supply. This is the last thing that the United States wants. Even the most, except for Bolton, who is gone now, everybody else in the U.S. administration, including members of Congress, are talking about nonviolent means. There is absolutely no appetite in the United States to have another war in the Middle East, like for the United States actually to carry on the war, to go in, send soldiers, have a comprehensive attack on Iran. I think that is very remote. I don't see it happening. The United States would be willing to attack, to have some minor attack, but they could do that in Syria, where it is defenseless, but not against Iran. So I think it is unlikely that anything will happen. I think what the events of the past few days was to make a point. I think Iran made a point, and we will wait and see what will happen. I think the U.S. should keep sending messages that they are willing to talk, to maybe talk in secret. Maybe they should tell them that we are willing to talk in secret. So in case the Iranian theocracy would be embarrassed by these, nobody will find out about it. And put up their positions, place their positions, but not to ask for too much. Because Iran knows if it gives up its missile capabilities program, then something else will follow, and they may actually be deposed from power. So they don't want that. Based on a previous experience, the experience of Iraq with the missile capabilities of Iraq. Once Iraq gave up these missile capabilities, once it gave up their weapons of mass destruction, what happened to Iraq? Iraq was invaded, and now it's a total disaster for the Middle East at large.
Definitely, and war is the last thing the region of Middle East can afford at this point. Dr. Tomass, thank you very much for talking to us. As always, we really appreciate your analysis.
Thank you, Jafar.